The deep space salvage vessel, Resolute, drifted through the silent stretch between star systems. Inside the control room, Captain Marcus Hale sat in the pilot's chair, scanning the monitors. His eyes, sharp but tired, moved from one screen to another. Most days in the salvage business were slow. Empty space, old wrecks, and the occasional small asteroid haul. But tonight, the silence was broken by a faint beep. "Captain, I'm picking up something," said Ensign Rhea, the ship's sensor officer. Her young voice had a mix of excitement and concern. "It's a distress beacon, very weak. I almost missed it." Marcus straightened in his chair. "Location." Rhea tapped the console. "Origin point is an uncharted moon. Coordinates are here." She pointed to a glowing spot on the holographic star map. Marcus studied it. This part of space wasn't known for traffic. No trade routes, no colonies, just dark, quiet territory. He had served in the Terran Defense Force for years before retiring to this slower life. But his instincts told him this wasn't just a routine call. "Put it on speakers," Marcus ordered. The ship's systems translated the faint beacon into a repeating digital tone. No voice, no clear message, just the coded cry for help. Rhea frowned. Signal's very old tech, not human. The other crew members shifted uneasily. Everyone in deep space knew that an uncharted distress call could be anything: a trap, a dangerous wreck, or something worse. Marcus tapped the armrest. "We're going in. Adjust course to intercept." The helmsman, Joran, hesitated. "Sir, it could be dangerous. We're not a warship anymore." Marcus's voice was steady. "We're still people, and people help others." The Resolute cut through the black void, its engines humming softly. Hours passed until the moon came into view, a pale, mist-covered sphere hanging against the stars. The surface glowed faintly in patches, like fireflies under ice. As they entered the thin atmosphere, Marcus saw the wreck. It was an alien transport ship, half buried in a crater. Its hull was torn apart, scorch marks burned deep into the metal. The Resolute landed nearby with a soft thud. Marcus stood at the open hatch, wearing his lightweight armor. "Rhea, you're with me. Joran, keep the engines warm." They stepped onto the moon's surface. The air was breathable but damp, carrying the scent of moss and burnt metal. Strange, vine-like plants twisted out of the ground, their tips glowing with pale blue light. Inside the wreck, the corridor was a mess: shattered panels, broken lights, and streaks of dark, dried blood. Marcus's boots crunched over debris. His flashlight beam danced across alien script on the walls. Then he heard it. A small sound, a quick, shaky breath. He raised a hand for silence. Moving slowly, he approached a broken doorway. Inside was a small storage compartment, barely lit. Two figures huddled together in the corner. They were children, not human. Their skin had a soft lilac tone, and their large, dark eyes reflected fear. Their clothes were torn, and one clutched a small metallic pendant. Marcus knelt down, lowering his rifle so it wouldn't scare them. "It's okay," he said softly, knowing they wouldn't understand his words. The smaller child whimpered. The older one pulled them closer. Marcus tapped his helmet, activating his translator. His voice came through in a gentle tone, reshaped into their language. "We're here to help. My name is Marcus." The older child tilted their head, cautious, but curious. "You are not Scar?" Marcus frowned. "Scar?" The child's voice trembled. "The monsters. They took our mother." Rhea scanned the compartment. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple energy signatures about 2 kilometers out. Big ones, moving fast." Marcus looked at the twins. "Did the Scar do this to your ship?" The older one nodded slowly. "They come in the dark. They hunt. They will come back." Marcus's military instincts sharpened. He had heard of the Scar only in rumors. Insectoid predators, large and cunning, moving in packs. They were said to strip entire villages bare in a night. He turned to Rhea. "We're taking them with us. Now." They guided the twins back, to the Resolute, moving quickly through the wreck's jagged halls. Every shadow seemed to shift, every sound echoed too loudly. When they reached the hatch, Joran called out over comms, "Captain, I'm seeing movement on long-range scans, and it's coming our way fast." Marcus lifted the smaller twin into his arms and helped the older one aboard. "Get us airborne," he ordered. The Resolute rose from the moon's surface, engines roaring softly. Through the viewing screen, Marcus saw them, dark shapes moving just beyond the mist, long limbs, glinting armor, and glowing eyes. Even at this distance, he could feel their hunger. The twins clung to him, their small hands trembling. As the ship left the moon's pull, Marcus stood silently, thinking. The twins' mother was still out there, in the hands of creatures that would not stop until they had finished the hunt. He didn't know why he cared so much. They weren't human, and this wasn't his fight. But deep down, he knew one thing. If he left her behind, the twins would never smile again. And he wasn't the kind of man who could live with that. He turned to his crew. "Set a course back to the moon. We're going to find her." Joran's eyes widened. "Sir, you saw the readings? That's not a rescue mission, that's a war zone." Marcus's voice was calm, but his gaze was hard. "Then we'll go to war." The Resolute hovered above the pale moon, its engines quiet, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Inside the control room, the crew stood around the glowing star map. Marcus Hale's hand rested on the table as he studied the readings. Rhea pointed at several red dots blinking on the display. "These are the life signs I picked up earlier. There are more of them now, and they're moving in patterns, almost like they're surrounding an area." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's their territory. That's where they're keeping the twins' mother." Joran leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Captain, I'll say this again. We're not a warship. If we land in the middle of that, we won't last 5 minutes." Marcus looked at the twins, who were sitting quietly in the corner of the room. The older one held the younger close, whispering something in their language. Their big, dark eyes looked up at him, a mixture of hope and fear. He turned back to his crew. "We're not leaving her behind. Prep weapons. We're going in." The Resolute descended through the thin clouds, landing in a clearing surrounded by glowing plants. Marcus stepped out first, scanning the jungle with his rifle. The air was thick with mist, and strange insect-like calls echoed through the distance. Rhea followed, carrying a portable sensor unit. "I'm getting strong heat signatures about 1 kilometer to the north." The ground was uneven, covered in roots and rocks. Bioluminescent vines twisted along the trunks of massive trees, their light casting eerie shadows. The deeper they went, the more Marcus could feel the jungle closing in. Suddenly, a low hiss came from the darkness. Marcus raised his fist, the signal to stop. The sound grew louder, joined by a faint clicking noise like claws tapping on stone. From between the trees, a shape emerged. It was tall, with long limbs ending in sharp, curved claws. Its body was covered in hard, segmented armor, and 2 black eyes glinted in the light. A Scar. It moved slowly at first, head tilted as if studying them. Then, with shocking speed, it lunged. Marcus fired a short burst, the rounds slamming into the creature's armor. It screeched and staggered, but kept coming. Rhea hit it with a stun charge, the blue arc of electricity flashing through the mist. The Scar dropped to the ground, twitching. Marcus didn't waste time. "Move! That noise will draw more! They—" pushed forward, but the jungle wasn't empty. 2 more Scar appeared from the shadows, moving in from the sides. Marcus dropped one with a clean headshot, while Rhea's stun charge slowed the other long enough for Marcus to finish it. By the time they reached the edge of a ravine, the jungle was alive with the sound of distant screeches. Rhea checked her scanner. "They're converging on us. Multiple packs. We can't stay here." Marcus spotted a narrow stone bridge crossing the ravine. "That's our way through. We can use it to funnel them if they attack." They crossed quickly, but halfway over, a scar leapt from below, its claws scraping against the stone. Marcus shoved Rhea forward and fired, blasting it back into the mist. On the other side, they took cover behind a fallen tree. Marcus studied the map Rhea projected from her scanner. "We're close, less than 500 meters." The jungle began to thin, opening into a wide clearing. In the center was a structure, half-natural cave, half-built from dark alien metal. Large, jagged spires rose from the ground around it like the teeth of some great predator, and guarding the entrance were 6 scar. Marcus crouched, watching their movements. "They're organized. That's a hunting party." Rhea frowned. "We can't take them head-on." Marcus thought for a moment, then looked at the surrounding terrain. A thick cluster of glowing vines hung from a tree above the cave. "If we can bring that down, it might block the entrance long enough for us to get in and grab her." Rhea nodded. "I can overload my stunner, turn it into a makeshift charge." While she worked, Marcus kept his eyes on the guards. They moved with unsettling precision, their heads twitching in quick jerks as they scanned the jungle. Finally, Rhea whispered, "Ready." Marcus tossed the charge into the vines. A second later, a burst of light and heat tore through the air. The vines collapsed, crashing down in a glowing heap. The scar hissed and scrambled, some hacking at the vines, others looking for the source of the blast. Marcus and Rhea sprinted from cover, racing toward the cave. Inside, the air was damp and cold. The walls glistened with moisture, and strange symbols were scratched into the stone. The deeper they went, the more they saw signs of scar activity. Piles of bones, weapons made from scavenged metal, and strange cocoons hanging from the ceiling. They reached a large chamber, lit only by the faint blue glow of fungus. In the center was a raised platform. Something, or someone, was inside a translucent cocoon. It was the twins' mother. Her eyes opened weakly as Marcus approached. She tried to speak, but the words were faint and garbled. Marcus began cutting through the cocoon with his combat knife. "We're getting you out of here." Before he could finish, a loud screech echoed through the chamber. The guards outside had found them. The first scar charged in, claws slicing the air. Marcus fired, the shots echoing off the stone walls. Another scar leapt over the first, forcing Rhea to dive aside and blast it with her stunner. "Marcus!" "We can't hold them!" Rhea shouted. Marcus yanked the last strands of the cocoon apart, lifting the alien mother onto his shoulder. "Then we don't hold them! We run!" They sprinted through the tunnels, the sound of claws pounding behind them. The faint light of the outside grew closer. As they burst out of the cave, Joran's voice crackled over comms. "Captain, we've got company in the air. 24 scar inbound." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Then keep the engines hot because we're coming in fast." They raced toward the Resolute, the ground shaking under the Scar's pursuit. The battle for survival had only just begun. The Resolute lifted from the moon's clearing, its engines rumbling low as it climbed above the mist. Inside, Marcus carried the twins' mother to the medbay, placing her gently on the bed. Her breathing was weak but steady. Rhea ran scans over her. "She's badly dehydrated, but no fatal wounds. She'll recover if we keep her away from those things." Marcus nodded, but his mind wasn't calm. The Scar had attacked with precision, and they had moved like they owned the moon. If they weren't stopped, they would keep hunting, and Marcus knew they would never forget the ones who escaped. That night, the crew gathered in the control room. The holographic map of the moon hovered above the table. Rhea pointed to a glowing red cluster. That's the hive. This is where the scar numbers are highest. Our scans show at least a few hundred individuals there. Joran raised his eyebrows. A few hundred? That's not a rescue mission. That's a suicide mission. Marcus didn't flinch. If we run, they'll follow us. If we stay, they'll come here. Either way, they won't stop until the twins and their mother are dead. Silence filled the room. Marcus continued, his voice calm but firm. We can't take them all head on, but I can make them bleed. I've done it before. Rhea frowned. You're talking about going in alone? Marcus nodded. I'll move through the jungle, hit their hunting parties, take out their scouts, collapse their tunnels. I'll turn their hive into a trap. Joran shook his head. That's madness. Marcus glanced at the twins sitting quietly in the corner, watching him with wide eyes. Madness is letting them grow stronger. By dawn, Marcus was ready. He wore his combat armor, old but reinforced with scavenged plating. His rifle was slung over his back, and his belt was loaded with grenades, knives, and homemade charges built from the Resolute's spare parts. The twins stood at the hatch, the older one clutching the pendant tightly. They stepped forward and placed it in Marcus's hand. It belonged to our father, the older one said through the translator. He was a protector too. Marcus closed his fingers around it. Then I'll carry it with honor. The hatch opened, and Marcus stepped into the misty jungle. He moved silently, using the shadows as cover. His years in the Terran Defense Force had taught him that speed was nothing without patience. He watched the paths the Scar patrols used, noting how they paused to listen, how they moved in groups of 3 or 4. His first target was a small hunting party resting in a hollow. They crouched over a fresh kill, their claws slick with dark fluid. Marcus crawled into position behind a fallen log, aimed carefully, and fired 3 quick shots. 2 Scar dropped instantly. The third spun around with a screech, but Marcus finished it before it could charge. He dragged the bodies into the undergrowth, leaving no sign. For the next hours, Marcus moved like a shadow. He ambushed patrols, used tripwire grenades to collapse, narrow trails, and planted explosives at tunnel entrances. Every time a Scar group disappeared, their absence would be noticed, and that would draw more of them away from the hive. But each fight left its mark. His armor was scratched and dented, and a shallow cut burned along his side where a claw had grazed him. Still, he pushed forward. At one point, he found a broken Scar spear wedged into a tree. He took it, testing its weight. It was light, but sharp, made from a black alloy he had never seen before. He strapped it to his back. Near midday, he reached a ridge overlooking the hive. The sight froze him for a moment. The hive was massive, a sprawling network of tunnels and chambers carved into the base of a jagged cliff. Dozens of Scar moved in and out, carrying food, weapons, and strange glowing stones. Marcus studied their movements. There was a pattern. Certain tunnels saw more traffic, and certain guards stayed in fixed positions. If he could bring those tunnels down, he could trap a large number inside. He waited until dusk before moving closer. As the jungle grew darker, the Scar became more active. Their black armor made them almost invisible in the shadows, but Marcus knew how to track them. The faint glimmer of their eyes, the clicking of their claws, and the smell of their bodies, like burnt metal and earth. He slipped into one of the outer tunnels, placing a timed charge along a support pillar. Then another deeper inside. He moved quickly but quietly, always listening for movement. Halfway through planting the last charge, he heard a sound behind him. A faint scrape. Marcus spun just as a Scar lunged from the darkness. He barely blocked with his rifle, the impact knocking him to the ground. The creature's claws slashed toward his chest, but Marcus rolled aside, drawing his knife and driving it into the Scar's neck. The alien screeched, flailing before. Collapsing, Marcus exhaled slowly, too close. Once the last charge was set, he retreated to the ridge and waited. The charges detonated in sequence, sending deep rumbles through the ground. Plumes of dust and smoke rose from the tunnels as sections collapsed. Scar poured out of the remaining entrances, their screeches echoing through the valley. Marcus stayed, hidden, watching the chaos unfold. They were confused, angry, and now spread thinner as they searched the jungle for the attacker. That attacker, him, was already moving toward his next target. Night fell fully, the jungle lit only by the soft glow of plants and the occasional flash from Scar weapons in the distance. Marcus knew this was far from over. He had hurt them, but they would adapt. He found a small clearing to rest for a moment, leaning against a tree. His body ached, and the cut on his side throbbed, but he ignored it. He looked at the pendant in his hand, the faint light from the plants reflecting off its surface. Somewhere back on the Resolute, the twins were waiting. Their mother was resting, and here, in the dark, the Scar were hunting him. Marcus smiled faintly. "Come and find me," he whispered, because he wasn't. Done yet, not even close. Marcus Hale crouched on the ridge, looking down at the Scar hive. The explosions from the night before had damaged several tunnels, but the swarm had rebuilt faster than he expected. Now, the cliffside pulsed with activity. Scar moved in and out like an endless river of shadows. The scale of the enemy was worse than he thought. Ria's scanner had been right. There were hundreds. If he counted wrong or moved too soon, they'd overwhelm him. But Marcus wasn't here to count. He was here to finish it. Before dawn, he set his plan in motion. Using the jungle for cover, he placed traps along the main approach paths to the hive, tripwires attached to grenades, pressure plates made from scavenged parts, and nets strung from high vines. He had done this kind of work during the Terran Wars, not to win with strength, but with patience and precision. He also prepared the final strike, a set of high-yield charges made from the Resolute's reserve explosives. If placed correctly, they could collapse the main hive chambers, trapping most of the Scar inside. As the first rays of sunlight touched the misty jungle, Marcus heard the clicks and hisses of Scar scouts. The hunt had begun. The first group to enter his traps never saw him. A tripwire grenade went off, scattering shrapnel. A second Scar, wounded but alive, tried to rush forward, only to step on a hidden plate that launched a spike upward, piercing its armor. The rest retreated into the shadows, their angry screeches echoing. Marcus moved quickly, resetting traps and staying ahead of their search. Every Scar he killed or slowed down was one less to face in the hive itself. By midday, he was at the outer tunnels. The air was damp, smelling faintly of metal and fungus. He checked his rifle, adjusted the strap on his knife, and stepped inside. The tunnels were alive with faint noises, clicking, dragging, and the soft hiss of Scar breath. Strange fungus lit the walls with a pale blue glow, casting long shadows. The first chamber he entered was full of storage, piles of bones, stolen weapons, and strange glowing crystals. He planted his first charge here, setting the timer. Further in, he passed a narrow bridge over a pit. Below, he could hear movement, dozens of Scar shifting restlessly. He planted a charge on the bridge supports before moving on. The deeper Marcus went, the more the hive felt like a living creature. The walls were smooth in places, carved in others, and sometimes reinforced with black alloy. It was hot, the air heavy. His armor felt heavier with every step. Finally, he reached the central chamber. It was enormous, a cavern stretching high above him, lit by glowing vines hanging from the ceiling. The floor swarmed with Scar, moving in chaotic but purposeful patterns. At the far end, Marcus spotted the largest of them. A Scar leader, its armor darker and thicker than the rest. Around it, guards stood motionless, their eyes scanning the shadows. This was the heart of the hive. Marcus didn't hesitate. He set the last of his charges on the main support pillars of the cavern. The explosives were synced. One detonation would bring the ceiling down. But before he could leave, one of the guards saw him. A screech split the air, and the chamber erupted in motion. Scar charged from every direction. Marcus fired in short, controlled bursts, dropping the first few before switching to grenades. Explosions shook the cavern, sending dust raining from above. Still they came. One leapt from the side, knocking him to the ground. Its claws scraped against his chest plate, leaving deep marks. Marcus slammed his knife upward, the blade sliding under its armor. He rolled free just as another Scar closed in, using his rifle like a club to knock it back before finishing it with a burst of fire. The fight became a blur of motion and sound, claws flashing, rifle shots echoing, grenades thudding. Every time Marcus thought he had a moment to breathe, another wave appeared. His armor was dented, his arms ached, and the heat inside the hive was suffocating. But he kept moving toward the exit, leading them into his traps. At the narrow bridge, the first line of Scar followed him without hesitation. Marcus triggered the charge, and the bridge collapsed, sending dozens into the pit below. Their screeches faded into silence. At last, he reached the first chamber he had entered. The timer on the explosives was nearly done. Marcus could already hear the distant rush of Scar coming from the deeper tunnels. He sprinted toward the jungle, diving behind a fallen tree just as the charges went off. The explosion shook the ground like thunder. A massive plume of dust and debris erupted from the cliffside as the central chamber collapsed. The sound of Scar screeches was drowned out by the roar of falling rock. When the dust settled, the main hive entrance was gone, buried under tons of stone. But Marcus wasn't finished. Survivors were already scattering into the jungle. Some were wounded, some confused, but all were dangerous. He picked them off one by one, using his traps, the shadows, and the terrain to his advantage. By the time the sun began to set, the jungle was quiet again. The air smelled of smoke and earth, and the ground was littered with the broken remains of Scar armor. Marcus sat against a tree, his rifle across his knees. His body ached, and new scars burned along his arms and side. He didn't know exactly how many he had killed today, but the number was high, over 300, maybe more. He looked toward the Resolute, faintly visible through the trees, and thought of the twins and their mother. They were safe because of this. He took the pendant from his pocket, the metal warm in his hand. "Worth it," he whispered. Then he stood, adjusted his gear, and began the slow walk back to the ship. The jungle was quiet, as Marcus Hale moved carefully through the ruins of the collapsed hive. The dust from the explosion still hung in the air like a thin fog, and the faint smell of burnt metal and earth mixed with the natural scent of wet leaves. Every step he took was careful. He knew the Scar might still be hiding, wounded but dangerous. The Resolute was waiting a few kilometers away, but Marcus did not hurry. His mission was not over yet. Somewhere in the depths of the ruined hive was the twins' mother. He could feel it in his bones. Marcus entered a dark tunnel, lit only by the soft blue glow of strange fungi on the walls. The air was heavy and still. He moved quietly, listening to every sound. His rifle was ready, his senses alert. This place had been the home of hundreds of Scar. Now it was a graveyard. Ahead, he saw a faint light shining through a thin layer of translucent webbing. A cocoon. He knelt down and gently cut through the webbing with his knife. Inside was the alien woman. She was thin and weak, her skin pale and covered in bruises, but her eyes opened slowly when Marcus touched her shoulder. The twins' mother looked at him with tired, grateful eyes. "You came," she whispered in, her soft lilac voice, translated by Marcus's helmet. "I feared no one would." Marcus smiled faintly. "I promised the twins I'd bring you home. She tried to sit up, but pain forced her back down. Marcus supported her. "We need to get you out of here." Just then, distant sounds echoed through the tunnel. The low growl of Scar hunting parties coming back to check their ruined hive. Marcus's eyes darkened. "We don't have much time." He lifted her gently, making sure not to hurt her. The woman held tightly to the pendant that the twins had given Marcus earlier, a symbol of hope and protection for their family. Together, Marcus and the woman moved through the tunnels. The way was dangerous. Debris blocked some paths, and every step could trigger hidden traps. But Marcus knew this terrain well now. He used his knowledge of the jungle and the hive's layout to avoid the worst dangers. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. Shadows grew long and cold. The jungle was alive with sounds, insects chirping, distant howls, and the ever-present threat of Scar patrols. At one point, they were forced to hide in a hollow log when a small group of Scar passed nearby. Marcus held his breath, careful not to make a sound. The woman, though weak, held steady, her eyes closed as if trying to rest. Once the danger passed, they continued. The path back to the Resolute was still long. When they finally reached the ship, the crew rushed to help. Rhea and Joran carefully lifted the woman on board and took her to the medbay. Marcus stayed by the hatch, looking at the twins waiting inside. The twins ran to him, hugging his legs tightly. Their eyes were full of tears and relief. Later in the medbay, the alien woman's strength slowly returned. She thanked Marcus quietly, speaking in her language through the translator. "Your courage saved us," she said. "My people do not forget." She reached into a pouch and pulled out a small, glowing device. "This is a gift, a key to knowledge and wisdom. For you and your people." Marcus took the device carefully. He felt its warmth, as if it held the weight of many generations. That night, Marcus sat alone in the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched out before him like a sea of light. He thought of the battle, the scars he carried, and the promise he had kept. His scars were not just wounds, they were proof of a choice: to stand, to fight, to protect. The twins came to sit beside him. They did not speak, but their presence was enough. They smiled softly, trusting him as family. Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The Scar were still out there, somewhere, in the galaxy, waiting. But for now, a small family was safe, and that was worth every scar. The Resolute glided into orbit around the Terran space station known as Haven Prime. The massive structure floated silently against the backdrop of stars, its docking bays glowing with soft lights. Inside the ship, Marcus Hale sat quietly in the medbay, his body healing, but his mind restless. The alien mother and her twins rested in a secure room nearby, recovering from their ordeal. Their wounds were mending, but the journey was far from over. Rhea entered the medbay with a small device in her hand. "Captain, the artifact the mother gave us. It's not just a gift. The scientists at Haven Prime are eager to study it. It could change everything?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Change how?" Rhea smiled. "The device contains star maps and technology far beyond anything we have. It could guide us to new planets, new resources, even new allies." Marcus nodded slowly. He had not expected a simple rescue mission to turn into something so important. As the ship docked, Marcus stepped onto the station's busy promenade. People of many species moved about, speaking in dozens of languages. Traders, diplomats, soldiers, and explorers all mingled here, a true crossroads of the galaxy. Marcus's scars marked him as a veteran, but they also told a story of courage and sacrifice. The twins, now healthy and curious, followed him closely. They wore simple clothes given by the station's caretakers, their lilac skin glowing softly under the station's lights. As they walked, the older twin tugged Marcus's sleeve. "Uncle Marcus," they said in their own language, which the translator made clear. You are family to us." Marcus smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. Family. The word had taken on new meaning for him. Later, in the council chamber of Haven Prime, the alien mother spoke before a gathering of leaders from many worlds. She told the story of Marcus's bravery, the battles he fought alone against hundreds of monsters, the scars he earned to save her family. Her voice was proud but humble. "He carried the weight of my people's hope. He became our guardian." The leaders listened intently. Many nodded, recognizing the importance of this human who had stood against impossible odds. After the council meeting, Marcus was called to a private chamber. There, the alien mother presented him with a symbol of honor, a finely crafted medal etched with the emblem of her people. "This is the Guardian's mark," she said softly. "It means you belong to us now, as protector and friend." Marcus accepted the medal with respect. He placed it carefully over his chest, feeling its weight. Back on the Resolute, Marcus looked out at the stars once more. The pendant from the twins hung around his neck. The medal rested beside it. His scars still ached sometimes, reminders of battles fought and lives saved. But now, they also stood for something more, a bond between species, a bridge between worlds. The twins climbed into his lap, their smiles bright and hopeful. Marcus held them close, feeling the peace that comes from knowing he had done the right thing. In a galaxy full of dangers, where monsters lurked in shadows and darkness threatened all, humanity's courage had shone through, and that courage had been worth every scar.